You don't notice it at first. You just feel something heavy in the air when you talk to her, a kind of quiet darkness behind her smile. Modern men sense this instantly, even if they can't explain it. Because today, almost every man has already carried someone else's emotional weight once, and it nearly broke him. And once you've survived that kind of burden, you become careful. You become selective. You start paying attention to the smallest signs that someone expects you to fix what you didn't destroy. Men don't hate women with emotional baggage. They fear becoming the collateral damage of someone else's past. And in a world where men are rarely allowed to break, they've learned the truth the hard way. If you take on someone's unresolved pain, you risk losing yourself in it. That's why modern men step back, not out of cruelty, but out of instinct, out of survival. Modern dating has created a strange paradox. Men are expected to be emotionally available, supportive, empathetic, and stable. Yet they are also expected to absorb emotional wounds that they did not create. Many men step into relationships hoping for connection, only to discover that they're being treated as a repair station for someone else's past. And the moment they sense this imbalance, something inside them tightens. Because men today have learned, often through painful experience, that emotional baggage isn't just a difficult past. It becomes a living presence in the relationship. It shows up in constant suspicion, in sudden mood shifts, in fears disguised as accusations, in the expectation that a man should endlessly reassure, fix, stabilize, and hold someone who doesn't hold herself. The problem isn't that men don't want to support their partners. Men are naturally protective and loyal. The real issue is that many women carry emotional wounds so deeply rooted that they unknowingly transfer their fear onto the man standing in front of them. And over time, he begins to feel like he's not loved, he's needed, not desired, depended on, not chosen, used to fill the void left by someone else. Men today exist in a world where they have almost no space for their own pain. They're told to be strong, be stable, be patient, be understanding, and be the rock. But even a rock erodes if waves keep crashing against it without pause. Emotional baggage becomes a weight that slowly drains a man's energy, his confidence, his identity, even his ability to feel close. And here lies the core of the problem. Most men aren't running away from women. They're running from the version of themselves they become when someone else's unresolved past becomes their daily reality. Men step away not because they lack empathy, but because they fear losing control of their own mental stability. They fear becoming responsible for emotions that aren't theirs. They fear sacrificing their peace for chaos they didn't create. This isn't avoidance. It's self-protection. It always starts the same way. You meet someone who seems gentle, warm, kind, someone who smiles with a softness that makes you want to protect her. She has that vulnerability in her eyes that awakens the instinct every man carries inside, the desire to be her safe place. In the beginning, everything feels light. Conversations flow. She laughs easily. She seems grateful for your presence. You feel like you're finally building something real, something honest. But then the small cracks begin to appear. At first, it's tiny things, subtle comments that seem harmless. She asks why you didn't reply fast enough. She asks who you were with. She wonders if you're losing interest. She apologizes excessively for minor things, as if she's afraid you'll leave over something insignificant. You brush it off, thinking it's just insecurity. You reassure her, and she calms down for a moment. But the cycle repeats. The questions get sharper. The fears get louder. The cracks widen. You notice the weight of her past long before she speaks about it directly. It shows in the way she watches your reactions, waiting for signs of danger. It shows in how tense her body becomes when she feels misunderstood. It shows in the way she turns distant the moment something triggers her, something you didn't even realize could hurt. And slowly, without noticing, you begin adjusting yourself around her pain. You choose your words more carefully. You avoid certain topics. You change how you behave when she's stressed. You start predicting her emotional shifts before they happen. Not because you want to walk on eggshells, but because you want peace. Because you want to avoid watching her collapse into fear or sadness over something that had nothing to do with you. And in the process, a strange transformation happens inside you. You stop being yourself. You become what she needs at any given moment. A comforter, a stabilizer, a therapist, a protector, a shield. Everything except a man with his own needs. You start noticing how much space her emotions take in the relationship. How quickly her moods fill the room. How every disagreement becomes a reflection of her past. How every misunderstanding becomes proof in her mind that you will eventually hurt her. And no matter how much you reassure her, it's never enough. Because you're not fighting with what you said. You're fighting with ghosts, shadows of people who broke her long before you arrived. There comes a moment when you realize something painful. You're trying to love someone who doesn't know how to believe in love anymore. Someone who mistakes your silence for anger, your tiredness for withdrawal, your independence for abandonment. So you give more, and she needs more, and the cycle deepens. Then one day, you catch yourself feeling exhausted over situations that shouldn't be exhausting. You find yourself holding back your true thoughts because you don't want to trigger another emotional spiral. You feel drained after simple conversations. You feel anxious before meeting her, unsure which version of her you'll encounter that day. You recognize something even more frightening. You are disappearing. Your peace is fading. Your identity is shrinking. Your confidence is wearing thin. Your emotional world is becoming smaller because you're constantly compensating for hers. You start thinking about yourself again, something you haven't done in a long time. You notice how heavy things feel. You begin questioning if love should feel like carrying a weight every single day. You wonder if this connection is healing her or slowly breaking you. Then one day, it might be during a quiet car ride or while sitting on your bed late at night, a simple realization hits you with unexpected clarity. You cannot save someone who doesn't want to heal. You cannot fix wounds you didn't cause. You cannot trade your peace for their chaos. And loving someone shouldn't mean losing yourself. This realization doesn't come with anger. It comes with sadness, a deep, quiet sadness that only men truly understand. The pain of wanting to protect someone, but finally admitting that protecting them means destroying yourself. And that's when the truth becomes undeniable. You're not leaving her. You're returning to yourself. What men experience in these situations isn't just emotional exhaustion. It's a psychological imbalance created by a mismatch of needs, expectations, and emotional responsibility. Most modern men didn't grow up learning how to process their own pain, yet they're often expected to carry someone else's. This dynamic forms what psychologists call emotional overresponsibility, when one partner begins to regulate the other person's emotions at the cost of their own mental stability. The woman with heavy emotional baggage isn't broken, she's wounded. Her past shaped patterns of fear, abandonment, distrust, and hypervigilance. Her body reacts to small triggers as if they are threats. She reads between lines that were never written. She searches for danger in places where none exists. And while her reactions may come from trauma, they still have consequences for the man standing beside her. Men, on the other hand, tend to internalize stress instead of externalizing it. They don't explode, they absorb. They don't break out, they shut down. So when faced with a partner who frequently falls into emotional spirals, men respond in the only way they know how. They become caretakers, problem solvers, and stabilizers. They try to handle it. They adapt. But adaptation slowly turns into emotional self-abandonment. This creates a subtle but powerful psychological trap. The more he supports her, the more she depends on him. The more she depends on him, the less room he has for himself. And what makes this even heavier is the cultural pressure placed on men. Society tells men they must always be strong, calm, patient, steady, but denies them the emotional space to express fear, frustration, or vulnerability. A man in this situation doesn't just feel overwhelmed. He feels guilty for feeling overwhelmed. He thinks he's failing if he's tired. He thinks he's weak if he wants space. He thinks he's selfish if he wants balance. Meanwhile, her unresolved pain becomes a lens through which she interprets everything. Minor delays become abandonment. Quietness becomes rejection. Independence becomes a threat. A neutral tone becomes anger. Past trauma scripts her reactions, and he becomes the unintended target of every old wound. Over time, the relationship stops being a partnership and becomes a cycle of emotional firefighting. He spends more energy putting out emotional fires than building a real connection. And the longer this continues, the more the man's nervous system enters a protective state, distancing, withdrawal, numbness. Not because he doesn't care, but because he's overwhelmed. At the core of the psychology is this truth. Men are not afraid of love. They're afraid of losing themselves inside someone else's chaos. Women are not intentionally demanding. They're unconsciously reacting to fears they never healed. But a man's instinct for self-preservation eventually awakens. His mind recognizes the danger long before he consciously admits it. His body feels the tension. His spirit feels the weight. And slowly, a man begins to understand that emotional baggage isn't about the past. It's about everything it takes from the present. There always comes a moment, quiet, subtle, almost unnoticeable, when a man finally understands the truth of the situation he's in. It rarely happens during a fight and never during a dramatic moment. It happens in stillness, in silence, in an ordinary second where something shifts inside him, and he sees his reality not through hope or fear, but through clarity. For some men, this realization hits them while sitting alone in their car after another emotionally draining conversation. For others, it strikes while lying awake next to someone they care about deeply, wondering why they feel so distant. Sometimes it comes during a moment when she's overwhelmed, crying about something triggered from years ago, and he notices he's no longer rushing to fix it. He's just tired, quiet, empty. It's in that moment he understands. He hasn't been in a relationship. He's been in a recovery project. He didn't choose a partner. He inherited a history. He didn't build something new. He tried to repair something broken. He didn't grow. He managed, endured, stayed functional. And this realization isn't cruel. It's honest. Because he finally sees that the relationship wasn't built on two people choosing each other. It was built on him trying to save someone who hadn't saved herself yet. And that's when the deeper truth hits. Love cannot heal wounds that the person refuses to confront. Support cannot replace self-reflection. And stability cannot exist where emotional chaos is treated as normal. The man realizes he's been giving more than any relationship can sustainably require. He's been absorbing pain that isn't his. He's been sacrificing pieces of himself for a peace that never arrives. He sees that he's been fighting battles that began long before he ever walked into her life, and will continue long after he walks out of it. This awareness doesn't make him angry. It makes him sad, not because she's a bad person, but because he finally understands something that took him far too long to accept. You cannot build a future with someone who's still fighting their past. He realizes he wants partnership, not parenthood. He wants love, not dependency. He wants mutual effort, not emotional debt. And the hardest part? He still cares about her. He still wishes things were different. But caring doesn't fix incompatibility, and wishing doesn't heal wounds. What he truly sees now is the cost. Not financial, not practical, but psychological. The toll on his peace, the drain on his energy, the erosion of his joy, the slow fading of who he used to be. He recognizes that if he stays, he won't lose her, he'll lose himself. And in that exact second, the real transformation happens. Not for the relationship, but for him. He understands, maybe for the first time in his life, that a man's responsibility is not to be a hero, not to be a savior, not to be a shield, but to protect his own well-being before he protects anyone else's. His realization isn't that she's unworthy. It's that he deserves balance, peace, clarity, and reciprocity, not chaos dressed as love. In the end, The lesson isn't about judgment or blame. It's about awareness. Men who step away from relationships burdened by unresolved emotional baggage aren't cold, selfish, or incapable of love. They are awake. They are protecting themselves from a slow erosion of identity and peace that often goes unnoticed until it's too late. The truth is simple. Love should not feel like survival. A partnership should not require daily emotional triage. Men deserve relationships where effort is mutual, where vulnerability is met with trust, where the past doesn't dictate every moment of the present. When a man chooses himself first, he doesn't stop caring. He doesn't stop loving. He simply recognizes that his capacity to give is finite and his well-being is non-negotiable. And for those who have carried someone else's unresolved pain, there is clarity. Stepping back is not failure. It is wisdom. It is a declaration that balance, respect, and reciprocity matter. It is a quiet, firm boundary that allows both people to find peace in the long run, him in his own life and her in her healing journey. So ask yourself, are you giving your energy to someone who strengthens you or someone who consumes you? Are you building a life together, or are you trying to repair a past that never belonged to you? The answer may hurt. It may disappoint, but it will set the stage for the first step toward a life where love is not a burden, but a choice made freely by two people standing fully in their own truth.